High on a bluff overlooking the slate-grey North Sea, the silence in Elias Vance's home was not peaceful. It was a deliberate vacuum, a sound-proofing against the world. His modern, minimalist mansion, a geometric fortress of glass and slate, stood against the rugged, wild backdrop of the Scottish coast. Elias, a world-renowned architect who specialized in structures that defied gravity and invited light, lived in perpetual shadow, trapped by a single, unyielding emotional scar. The scar was not visible on his skin. It was woven into the fiber of his actions, manifesting as an obsessive control and a glacial distance that kept every human connection strictly transactional. The trauma, a devastating car crash 5 years earlier that had taken his fiancée, had left him physically intact, but internally destroyed. He was the survivor, and the accompanying guilt had birthed a chilling conviction. Proximity kills. He was a magnet for catastrophe, and therefore he must remain alone. His current project, the renovation of his own neglected backyard, was a final, desperate attempt to introduce life into his dead space, a project he instantly regretted. He had hired Seraphina Sera Hayes, a landscape artist whose work was famous for its raw, almost reckless embrace of wild beauty. Elias watched her through the floor-to-ceiling glass of his dining room as she moved among the overgrown weeds and dying hedges. Dressed in faded canvas pants and a sun-bleached cotton shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a loose, impractical braid. She moved like a dancer, finding the rhythm in the chaos of nature. She was the antithesis of his controlled, rectilinear world. She was life, and his carefully constructed walls shuddered on their foundations. "You wanted structure, Mr. Vance," Sarah said during their second consultation, pointing at a chaotic tangle of climbing roses suffocating an old stone wall. "But the structure is already here. It's just buried. The house is incredible, but this garden, this is a graveyard." His jaw tightened. "The analogy is unnecessary, Ms. Hayes. I want the wall exposed, the roses ripped out, and the ground leveled for a reflecting pool. A clean surface. No mess." Sarah's eyes, the color of warm amber, didn't flinch. They held a challenging yet strangely compassionate warmth. "You want to erase the history, I understand, but a reflecting pool needs depth. It needs something to reflect. Otherwise, it's just a puddle." She stepped closer, and Elias instinctively took a quarter step back. "I see the ghosts you're trying to bury here. They are everywhere, but if you try to pave over them, they'll just crack the concrete." This was the hook. She saw the ghosts. No one ever saw the ghosts. "I hired you for your technical skills, not your amateur psychoanalysis," Elias finally managed, his voice low and sharp, the practiced tone of a man used to authority. Sarah smiled, a genuine, sunlight-bright expression that hit him like a physical blow. "And I will give you exceptional technical skill, but my art is collaboration. The land has a memory, and so do you. If you want a garden that lives, you have to let it remember." She spent the next week deconstructing the space, not destroying it. She pruned aggressively, cutting back dead wood to reveal the strong, scarred trunks beneath. She found an ancient, moss-covered fountain hidden beneath a tangle of ivy, a detail Elias had demanded be removed, and slowly revealed its beautiful, broken ceramic. One late afternoon, the air cool and thick with the scent of damp earth and bracken, the usual mist rolling in from the glen, Elias found her kneeling by the fountain. She was sketching in a leather-bound notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration. "What are you doing?" he asked, standing a respectful 5 feet away. "Mapping the shadows," she murmured, not looking up. "The light hits this fountain perfectly at this time. It's perfect, but the shadow is too harsh. It needs something soft here, something to temper the contrast." He frowned, then walked closer, compelled by her focus. He leaned over her shoulder, inhaling the scent of her, sunshine, sweat, and something subtly floral, like crushed lavender. It was intoxicating and dangerous. "It's structurally sound," he observed, pointing to her sketch of the fountain's base. "Yes, but look." She traced a delicate crack in the ceramic with a dirt-smudged finger. "This damage, it tells a story. It's where the water will pool, where the light will hit differently. If I repair it perfectly, it loses its history. I want to honor the break." Their proximity was suddenly too much. The scent of her skin, the sight of the dirt under her nails, the gentle curve of her neck. It triggered a physiological response he hadn't experienced in years. A tightening in his chest, a dizziness that wasn't panic, but something closer to desire. A yearning for the chaos she represented. He straightened abruptly, stepping back as if burned. "It's your call. Just finish the project on time." Sera rose slowly, her amber gaze tracking his retreat. She didn't press. She simply nodded. "I think I have an idea for the reflecting pool too. I want to line it with black river stones, not concrete. They absorb the heat and the light, making the reflection deeper. The water will look like ink, Mr. Vance. It will be the deepest puddle you've ever seen." The tension between them escalated over the following weeks, fueled by shared intellectual passion and a potent unspoken physical awareness. They would review plans late into the evening, the architect and the artist, both masters of control in their respective mediums, now forced into a dynamic dance of letting go. One night, a sudden, brutal Highland storm swept in, trapping Sera at the house. Wind howled a mournful, wild song around the geometric house, and rain lashed against the glass walls, turning the garden into a blurred, impressionistic painting. Elias, rarely comfortable allowing anyone into his inner sanctum, found himself pouring 2 glasses of expensive amber whiskey. They sat in the vast, empty living room, the power flickering, talking about things that had nothing to do with design. They spoke of the burden of expectations, the weight of legacy. "You build things that last forever, Elias," Sera said, taking a slow sip of the whiskey, using his first name for the first time. "It must be exhausting fighting entropy all the time." "It's necessary," he replied, looking into the dark depths of his drink. "Chaos is destructive, structure is survival." "But life is chaos," she countered, her voice soft, the storm thundering punctuation outside. A seed bursting from the ground, a wave crashing, a person falling in love. It's all beautiful, magnificent chaos. She turned to face him fully, tucking her knees beneath her. And survival isn't in the structure. It's in the flexibility to bend without breaking. Elias felt the walls around his heart begin to crack, just like the ceramic fountain. He looked at her, truly looked at her. Her face, illuminated by the flickering candlelight, was open, honest, and utterly without judgment. She leaned in, her eyes asking permission, not demanding it. The air was thick, charged with the energy of the storm and their weeks of contained attraction. This was the 10%. The moment where the emotional dam broke into the physical. He moved first, an unexpected, almost desperate lunge that covered the small space between them. His hands found the back of her head, his fingers tangling in the heavy braid, and he pulled her against him. Their mouths met, and it was not a gentle, exploratory kiss. It was the release of every pent-up tension, every intellectual spar, every shared glance over a blueprint. It tasted like rain and whiskey, and the wild, unpredictable scent of her skin. Sera responded instantly, with a passion that surprised him, melting into his embrace. Her arms wrapped around his neck, pulling him down, deepening the kiss into something consuming. Elias felt a glorious, terrifying flood of sensation, the heat of her mouth, the pressure of her body against his, the sound of her breath catching. He lowered her onto the vast, soft rug, the world narrowing to the space they occupied. Her shirt was damp from the rain, clinging to her skin, and he slid his hands under the fabric, feeling the smooth, supple curve of her waist. She pressed closer, murmuring his name against his mouth. And then it happened. The flash of memory, the screech of tires, the shattered glass, the silent, awful realization that he couldn't move, couldn't save her. The guilt, sharp and suffocating, plunged into his chest like ice. He gasped, tearing his mouth away, his body stiffening into stone. His breath hitched, turning into a ragged, wheezing struggle. Sera instantly froze, her hands reaching for his face, her expression shifting from passion to profound concern. "Elias, what is it? What's wrong?" "Get away," he choked out, pushing himself violently off her, scrambling backward until his back hit the cold glass wall. He clutched his chest, eyes wide and unfocused, seeing only the ghostly image of his fiancée's face. You can't be close to me. I break things. I destroy them." He was trembling, drenched in a cold sweat. His architectural composure was gone, replaced by the raw, terrifying panic that had been his constant companion for 5 years. Sera didn't follow. She sat up, her eyes blazing with a steady, fierce light. She didn't look frightened, only determined. "Tell me," she demanded, her voice firm. She did not beg, she did not retreat. She anchored herself in the moment. "You want me to leave? Fine. But not before you tell me what you're running from. If you believe you're dangerous, I need to know why, not just be discarded." Elias slid down the wall, burying his head in his hands, defeated. The Highland storm outside had eased into a persistent atmospheric drizzle, leaving a desolate silence. He confessed everything, the words torn from his throat like rough stones. The skid, the choice of the wrong second, the freezing terror, the subsequent death, and the unending burning guilt. "I was there," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I survived because I froze. I didn't earn it. And if I let anyone close, if I love them, I'm just putting them in the path of the next accident. I'm the flaw in the structure, Sera, the stress fracture waiting to fail." He waited for the pity, the horror, the inevitable fear that would make her flee. Instead, Sera got up, walked over, and sank onto the floor a careful, non-threatening distance away. She didn't touch him. "The greatest structures in the world, Elias, all fail eventually," she said quietly. "But the ones that stand the longest are the ones that acknowledge the forces acting against them. You weren't the cause of the accident, you were a victim of it. And your scar, this guilt, isn't a curse you pass on. It's a memory you carry." She finally extended her hand, palm up, resting it gently on the rug halfway between them. "A scar is where the healing happened. It's where the skin knitted itself back together, thicker and stronger than before. You are not a stress fracture, Elias. You are the foundation that held when everything else collapsed. And you are here. That survival is not something you have to earn. It's a gift you have to accept." He stared at her hand. It was beautiful, smudged with earth, strong and reaching. It was an invitation to life, an invitation to risk. Slowly, his trembling eased. He lifted his hand, his fingers hesitating for a moment over the chasm of fear, and then he grasped hers. The connection was gentle, grounded. It was not the panicked heat of desire, but the deep, steady warmth of acceptance. The healing began in that room on that floor, with the quiet understanding of shared humanity. A month later, the garden was complete. The reflecting pool, lined with black stones, shimmered like deep, liquid ink, reflecting the sky and the sharp geometry of the house. The ancient ceramic fountain, its broken history intentionally visible, ran with clear, clean water, feeding new, vibrant moss. Elias walked out into the garden at dawn, the air cool and carrying the sharp, salty tang of the distant sea. He found Sera waiting by the fountain, watching the sunrise paint the house in shades of pink and gold. "It's beautiful," he said simply. "It's exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know it." "It's ready for the next phase," she whispered, her amber eyes shining. "And what is that?" She took his hand, this time without asking. She led him to a small, secluded area she had replanted with night-blooming jasmine and soft, fragrant herbs. She looked at him, her gaze a deep, powerful promise. "It's time to stop just surviving, Elias. It's time to live." She didn't rush him. She traced the lines of his jaw with her thumb, waiting until he leaned into her touch. The fear was still there, a low, distant hum, but it was no longer screaming. It was overshadowed by the profound, comforting weight of her presence. He closed the remaining distance, pulling her into an embrace that was deliberate and full of intention. This time there was no panic, only certainty. His kiss began as a tender query and quickly deepened into a shared language. He lifted her into his arms and she wrapped her legs around his waist, her body a perfect, yielding complement to his strength. They didn't retreat to the house. They sank onto the soft, cool grass next to the pool, hidden by the newly thick jasmine. This was their truth, raw, immediate, and utterly vulnerable. Elias ran his hands over the smooth skin of her back, peeling away the layers of damp fabric until she was pressed against him, skin to skin, the morning dew cooling their heated bodies. The scent of the jasmine was overwhelming, mixed with the earth and the rising sun. Their intimacy was a deliberate act of trust, a sensual, unhurried exploration of acceptance. He learned the rhythm of her breath, the soft sighs that escaped her lips when he pressed his mouth to the curve of her throat, the way her muscles tensed and then relaxed in complete surrender. He worshipped the life in her, the warmth that chased away his internal ice. When he finally moved into her, it was not with the frantic energy of lust, but with the measured, deep gravity of two worlds colliding and merging perfectly. Her gasp was a sound of pure pleasure and affirmation, and he felt the last, brittle fragments of his fear shatter and dissolve in the face of her unqualified love. He moved with her, his mind clear, anchored not in the past but in the fierce, undeniable present of her body surrounding him, her hands holding him to her. This was the structure he truly needed, not slate and glass but the human connection. It was beautiful, magnificent chaos. When the sun was fully over the horizon, they lay intertwined, watching the steam rise off the black river stones of the reflecting pool. Elias turned his head, looking at the ceramic fountain where the water now flowed freely, running through the visible crack in its base. "The scar," he murmured, tracing the faint lines on her palm with his finger. "You made it a feature, not a flaw." Sera turned to him, her eyes soft with love and damp with the morning dew. "We all have cracks, Elias. The love isn't in fixing them. It's in letting the light shine through them." He kissed her, a slow, gentle promise. He was still Elias Vance, the architect, but he was no longer trapped. He was free, standing in a garden of new growth, ready to build a life, not a tomb. The house was no longer a fortress. It was a home. They spent the morning planning the new additions, a small, sturdy trellis for the vine that was growing too enthusiastically, and a small bench by the fountain, placed perfectly for two.